because now we're going to go through the mock draft, which I did. So hopefully if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be seeing the screen on the graphics. You can see exactly who was picked when, but I'll talk the guys through it. They've already seen the mock draft. But we'll go through each pick and everyone will interject if they've got any questions or, they had any differences of opinion or, want to pose a question to the group, and we'll kind of go through that way. First pick, obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this one is set in stone by everyone. It's Trevor Lawrence, quarterback from Clemson. No doubts, I don't think in anyone's mind that that's what will happen. Second pick, New York Jets at the moment picking there. I put Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. I think this one is less about which player goes at number 2 and which team picks that player. Zach Wilson really, in my opinion, separated himself from Justin Fields. Does anyone have any opinions on the top 3 quarterbacks and where they sit? Henry, looking at you.
Yeah, for me, and I think previously on the pod a few weeks ago, I said that Fields was still my 2. I'm the same as you now, Josh. I have them ranked 1, 2, 3 with Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields, just as you do have picked in this mock. And I do feel that the Jets would go for Wilson, particularly as a Jets fit and as a sort of face of franchise. I think they would go Wilson at this point. I guess the only thing that could buck this trend is signing a big veteran free agent for the Jets, a la Deshaun Watson. But yeah, for me, I think the top 2 is both the way I would go and the way that I think it will play out going forward. I think one thing I'd like to mention is just, we've talked about it, the quarterbacks who have had real success recently. You think of Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. They've got incredible tools. They're athletic outside the pocket. They've got huge arms in terms of arm strength and ball placement. And I think that's something that is now more required than ever. All 4 of the top quarterbacks in this class have the potential to have those tools. So it's an interesting which one you pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's 2 big knocks which people have on Zach Wilson. One is he had a couple of seasons, his first 2, where he didn't complete the whole season because of injury niggles. And then at BYU, the competition's not as great, but I'm pleased you brought up Patrick Mahomes, because Texas Tech, when he was playing there, you look at that level of competition, it hasn't affected his NFL level. So, yeah, I'd be very interested to see what happens. We ran a poll actually today at the point of recording, and 50% of people thought the Bears would be picking at number 2. So interesting. Not what I expected. I thought maybe the Texans with Deshaun Watson to the Jets, but yeah, watch that space. Maybe the Bears make a big move there. Third pick, Miami Dolphins. This is a first non-quarterback, Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver from LSU. Big debate about who the top wide receiver is, but for me, Ja'Marr Chase still. Anyone want to jump in on that one? No?
Oh, yeah, Chris? No, I'll say that. Obviously, Ja'Marr Chase sat out this year, so all the hype was on Devonta Smith. And in terms of comparing their body types, they're different receivers. I think the bigger body Ja'Marr Chase would fit in better in Miami. They've already got some slight receivers. I don't think Devonta Smith, although he showed great hands in the College Bowl, he's got all the talent as well. I think there was a lot of hype about Ja'Marr Chase, and he arguably would have been the Heisman or number 1 receiver anyway if he had played this year. So I think I like that. I like Ja'Marr Chase to Dolphins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fits a mindset there that they want to go with. It's got to be tempting to take an Alabama receiver with Tua as a quarterback. That's kind of helped the storyline for most people mocking there. But yeah, for me, Ja'Marr Chase, I would be surprised if it was anything else. Number 4, Atlanta Falcons, taking Justin Fields from Ohio State. Number 5, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals taking Penei Sewell. For me, this one's a big one. Rashawn Slater has been a big riser at the offensive tackle spot, but Penei Sewell just has the athleticism that NFL teams are really looking for. Seahawks have a history of taking defensive linemen just to get that athleticism, next level blocking, and I think Penei Sewell, probably his intangibles take him at that point, or his athleticism rather. Number 6 is the Philadelphia Eagles. For me, that's where Devonta Smith finally goes. It is a bit of a fall considering he was the Heisman winner, like you pointed out, Chris, but I think the Eagles is a perfect spot for any receiver in this class. Henry, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, sure. So, really like how this mock's shaping up. I think from 3 to 6 are all teams that could look to trade down. And I think your point there, Josh, is really interesting with the Bengals. How big of a gap do they see between Penei Sewell and the next tackle? Probably Rashawn Slater. I know Darasaur is getting a lot of hype at the moment as well. There are teams that are going to want to trade up, whether to get Fields or to get Trey Lance. And I think those teams, I think Miami taking a non-quarterback at 3 would be a big mistake. I think the trade down value you can get in this draft and still get a top receiver in the top 10 is very, very possible. But yeah, I think it's gonna fall on how much of a gap do you see between the guy available right there and the guy available maybe 3, 4, 5 picks later.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And we've seen such a trade-happy league developing this off-season. So I would be very surprised if draft night didn't look very trade-happy too. And you're right, there's some clear areas where if you want to strengthen your team, you could move up in this draft. And yeah, absolutely, that's the range. Number 7, you talked about Trey Lance. For me, the Detroit Lions at 7, they pull the trigger, they take Trey Lance, and suddenly that's the top 4 quarterbacks off the board. That one will be really interesting to see what happens there, because at number 8, and this is a start for me where I really view teams that could be trading down as well. Carolina Panthers at number 8. I've put them Rashawn Slater, an offensive tackle. They've got 2 pending free agents at offensive tackle. We'll talk a bit about them later. But, if you've got a chance to get one of the top guys in the draft, I think we've seen offensive line and how much that means to teams now. Number 9, I've got the Denver Broncos taking a cornerback. Most people think they'll go for Caleb Farley, but I actually think Patrick Surtain is the better quarterback of the 2, even though he doesn't necessarily fit the Denver Broncos scheme and what you would expect. I think you've got to go with the best talent available. So that's really what I see there. Number 10, that's Caleb Farley for me to the Dallas Cowboys. It'd be interesting to see what happens on draft night with those 2, but the clear top 2 cornerbacks, I think, in this draft class. Then number 11, it's the New York Giants, and Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama, goes here. My personal favorite wide receiver for what he brings to a team. He does so much. He's a Swiss Army knife, like they always talk about. Can play in the slot, can play as your deep threat. Giants really need to bolster their wide receiver core.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of comparisons between Waddle and Smith. That sort of Waddle is basically the Ruggs player from this Alabama offense this year. He's the speedster. He's expected to run low 4.3s and be able to do everything you just said, Josh. Take a top of a defense, but also move around a lot. He's a lot better after the catch than Ruggs. A lot better route runner than Ruggs already. So I think overall, there's not really much debate that he's a better player at this stage than Ruggs. And interesting, Josh, I think you've only got 2 defensive players in your top 13, and that would be definitely the 2 spots that I'd see, and that position as well with Surtain and Farley.
Yeah, and definitely this draft class, just like most of them, it feels like you've got such depth on the defensive side of the ball that it devalues the position, but also the way the NFL goes too. So yeah, I would be very surprised if we see anyone else from the defensive side really creep in above that position, maybe one of the linebackers, but they're off-ball linebackers. So yeah, it'd be surprising. But then at 12, I've got the final of the top 3 offensive tackles, Christian Darrisaw going to the 49ers. Number 13, I see Elijah Vera Tucker, inside offensive lineman from USC, going to the Chargers. I think they've got to do something to protect Justin Herbert. What do you think, Connor? Do you think they can go with anything other than an offensive lineman in this draft?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, he like if they want to see that potential out of him, they're going to need to have much more protection for him. So yeah, no, I think that would be the best route for them to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 14 for me, it's the Minnesota Vikings taking Micah Parsons. And honestly, this was probably the pick which I struggled with personally the most. I just couldn't see where the value lied for the Vikings in the draft. If I was them, I would be looking to trade down 100%. And they've got Kendricks, so you get Micah Parsons, suddenly you've probably got the best linebacker tandem in the NFL, but it's at one of the least valued positions. And the other thing here as well, Micah Parsons may be a massive draft day faller. He's under some sexual assault allegations at the moment, so we'll see what happens there. Definitely a very talented player, but we'll see definitely what happens there.
I think that's a good comment where you make about the Vikings looking to trade down. We saw in the second half of the season they were performing like a much better team, a dark horse for the playoffs for all of us, I think. Obviously, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, the breakout of Justin Jefferson, superstar Adam Thielen. The second half of the season, they looked a whole different team. And I think they're better than pick 14. So I think to move down and perhaps strengthen somewhere and get a bit more value and a few more picks, add some depth, I think that's probably a smart move for the Vikings.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. And and equally, you made a good point when you listed the passing options in their attack. There's one glaring hole. Kyle Rudolph, he's a top half tight end in the league, but next spot for me, that's where Kyle Pitts finally goes. He's had this draft day slide in my mock draft. He goes 15 to the Patriots. I think the Vikings would have been looking very long and hard at him. And I actually imagine a team may trade up for a tight end if they want Pitts. But it just speaks to the value of the position, doesn't it? I know how we view tight ends, but Henry, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think, a lot the NFL is influenced by what's most recently happened and what happens in the playoffs. And you see the two teams that have made the playoffs with Kelsey, Gronk, all the weapons that surround them. You've got Brayton and OJ Howard on the Bucks, but also, Tyreek Hill and the vast array of weapons that the Bucks had at receiver with Evans, Godwin, and even though they had those players, they still went out and got Antonio Brown. I think it shows the value of having a third, fourth, fifth option, particularly when the Bucks were double teaming Hill and Kelsey in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I definitely think adding another playmaker to that Vikings offense could be really fun. But Pitts at 15 seems like good value.
Yeah, and I completely agree, Henry, and I think probably, as Connor will attest to, a top quality tight end, what that adds to your offense is so much more than so many other positions. But the thing which the NFL seems to be lacking at the moment is true evaluation skills of these top guys. We haven't seen tight ends really pan out as per their draft perspective. Since Eric Ebron went to the Lions, there was a massive bust. Evan Ingram's been so. All these guys who we really see as the future at the tight end position, they don't always pan out. So that's what I think some of the concern could be there too. But moving on, and at number 16, sorry, Connor, I talked about tight ends and I didn't go to you.
You got to come to me, it's just silly. No, what I think the one thing with that tight end role, which makes it so specific at this point in a draft as well, is that you don't get a finished article straight away, because the requirement of a tight end in the NFL isn't just one position. It isn't just it fulfills so much within that. It creates an extra blocker, an extra pass catcher. It should be that person that the quarterback can trust. There's so much to it for a tight end that transition into the NFL can be a little bit rocky. Like you said, we've seen it with Evan Ingram coming in as well, and but obviously you see some of the older tight ends do absolutely phenomenally, and when they are phenomenal, they really do make a huge impact on their team. So obviously it is great value to get one when you can, but it is a difficult prospect because you do demand so much out of them to consider them a successful tight end.
Yeah, let's bring it to fantasy for a second. Whilst you've jumped in on this, let's disrupt the mock draft right in the middle. Talk about Kyle Pitts. Next year in fantasy, what round are you considering Kyle Pitts as?
Me?
Regardless of team. Yeah, go on, Connor.
Just because I took a tight end in the second large.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 2.1, wasn't it? If we want to be specific. No, I think you take it late because you can't. I don't think you can necessarily trust how much they're actually going to get in terms of how many receptions they're actually going to get. I do think that there's a potential he might be used more as an extra blocker initially, with the option to go off and get some catches rather than the other way around.
Yeah. What about for you, Henry? Where do you view Kyle Pitts?
I think if Pitts goes to the right offense, well, I mean, in terms of talent, no doubt, instant top 5-7 tight end in the NFL. Like, I think he's that good, that athletic. I think he'll run fast, and he's very much in the, I think, sort of Darren Waller mold, where you can put him out wide, you can put him as a blocker, but I expect him to run maybe like mid 4.5s or something, even at that size. So I would think he'd be a really good fantasy option. You've got him mocked to the Patriots. That would not excite me as a fantasy option, depending on what they do at quarterback. But for example, if we're looking at the Vikings that we mentioned, the pick before, or maybe even an offense like the Cowboys or Broncos, I think that would be something where you'd be looking at him as a top 5 fantasy tight end, potentially as a rookie.
Yeah, let's see how that one pans out. And yeah, Darren Waller is absolutely the person who I think he translates the most to in the NFL, and we've seen his success this season. But bringing it back to the mock draft, pick number 16, just about halfway through, I've got the Cardinals taking J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. This is more based on what a cornerback brings to your team. I think J.C. Horn, top talent, definitely a first round pick, but that speaks to the passing league that we're in. 17, Las Vegas Raiders taking Kwity Paye, edge from Michigan. I think everyone thinks that the Raiders are going to take Kwity Paye. This one was a consensus pick, I'm sure, across the board. 17's right where he lands. Edge on a team that needs an edge, that values that type of edge rusher. It's written that he'll go there. Then pick number 18, we've got the Dolphins, second pick of the draft, taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker from Notre Dame. Definitely an outside linebacker, more of a pass defensive linebacker than a run stopper. And I think he's a really good talent, just at a devalued position. Then you've got the run on linebackers. 19, Washington football team, take Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa, who's a massive riser to start the year. Be really interesting to see what happens with him. Again, a devalued position. Then pick number 20, Chicago Bears take Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. This is probably the one which, if you don't know so much about the draft, you're probably wondering, where did Mac Jones fall? For me, 20 to the Bears. Chris, any thoughts on Mac Jones to that team?
Personally, I think he goes higher than 20. I'm not sure that he falls there. Whether he fits the Bears system, again, I'm not convinced. I think Patriots might be a better fit, potentially the Falcons, but I can't see them taking him up at 4. But I do like him. I do like him to New England.
Yeah, good point. Henry, what about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any faith in him succeeding in Chicago. I think that's a tough environment, a tough division, a lot of turnover on that roster, probably losing their best receiver. I wouldn't love that fit for Mac Jones, I don't think. But who knows what Chicago's going to do? They've been involved in trade rumors for Wentz after acquiring Foles, who won the Super Bowl after taking over Wentz's team. It's a very strange situation. I have no idea what they're going to sort out, but as a Packers fan, I wouldn't be terrified of seeing Mac Jones join the division at the moment, really.
Yeah, the more we get into this offseason, the more the Bears seem like the team that don't know what they're doing, don't they? And yeah, taking the quarterback that definitely wouldn't work in their scheme, in their division in the NFL, that wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe they pick higher, maybe they take one of the premier talents. But I think they've got to be all in on a quarterback to have a chance. Then 21, I see the Colts upgrading that defense even more, picking up Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback from Florida State. 22, Tennessee Titans taking Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher from Miami, had a very productive year.
I thought that was interesting, Josh. What made you? Was it more of a Raiders fit that made you go Paye over Rousseau? Because I think most rankings I have see Rousseau 1 as the edge. Do you like Paye over Rousseau, or was it more of a team fit that you were going for there?
Yeah, the thing for me, and this is the reason why I was kind of speeding off into the next one, is because Gregory Rousseau has benefited from being opposite Jalen Phillips, who I will talk about a bit more, because for me, he goes next to the New York Jets, and that's the biggest downside. If you exist on a defensive line where you don't get double teamed by inferior offensive line talent within the college football game, you haven't had the chance to prove yourself to the same degree that Kwity Paye has as the premier edge rusher in Michigan. We also see Michigan edge rushers have consistent success when they come to the NFL level. So, for me, those are just those couple of bits, but there's just something. There's, the athletic build of Paye. I just think he fits that mold more of what NFL defenses are looking for. Mike Mayock is a big prospective believer in that aspect of the game, a player's build and what that fits. So for me, it just fits more with the Raiders. But yeah, I could make the argument for Gregory Rousseau. But yeah, the 23rd pick for me is the Jets taking Jalen Phillips. And this guy, talent-wise, definite first-round pick. He's incredible. If you watch any of the Miami defensive highlights, you can see he consistently produces pressures. He leads to so many pressure sacks, and Gregory Rousseau was one of the bigger benefactors of that on the team. But the biggest question mark for Phillips, he used to play at UCLA. He had a few injuries. He actually quit football for a while, then transferred to Miami. So, he had one too many concussions, a niggling injury, a couple of niggling injuries. And, that was too much. I think NFL teams are really going to be concerned there. But, the talent often outweighs it. I could see him as a late round, first rounder in this draft for sure. 24, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Samuel Cosmi, tackle from Texas. To be completely honest, I don't like Samuel Cosmi much. I didn't like this pick. I wouldn't be making this pick if I was the Steelers. But equally, they have to take a tackle. They have to take an offensive lineman, surely, Chris, right? Who do you go for here?
Yeah, I mean, we all saw the struggles in the run game, certainly in the latter half of the season. Offensive linemen, whether it's interior or on the outside, I think it has to be the O-line. Big Ben, I'm pretty sure is going to be back for one final year. There was no productivity in the running game. I know we mentioned a running back, Najee Harris or Etienne before, but it has to be the O-line. The second half of the season really showed that we need to freshen up.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with Mac Jones not there, there's not much consideration to think about quarterback or anything either. 25th pick for me is the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking Alex Leatherwood. You just took Trevor Lawrence. Let's get him an offensive tackle. Put someone in there with him. Alabama offensive line. He's built the way to play in the NFL. Will need some polishing in the pass game, but very good talent. I'm actually surprised he fell this far in my mock. I definitely like him over Samuel Cosmi, but I just don't know where the two land on draft night. 26, Cleveland Browns, taking Christian Barmore, the first defensive tackle. And I think this is a poor draft move, but the Browns are a very tough team to mock at the moment. I wouldn't pick that either. I prefer Davion Nixon. But yeah, interesting one. When we get to this end of the draft, it becomes a bit tough to make predictions. 27 is the Baltimore Ravens, and they take Wyatt Davis. And for me, this was a no-brainer. I love Wyatt Davis. I think he is the best guard in the class. Elijah Vera Tucker has a lot of flexibility, which brings him up the draft class, and he went earlier. But I think Wyatt Davis just comes with such pedigree. If you watched him in the college championship games and the semi-final, honestly, he was a class above every other offensive lineman there. So yeah, really, really interested to see what he can do with Lamar Jackson in the Ravens in this scenario. 28, the Saints take Joseph Ossai, edge from Texas. Again, edge rushers in this class, there's really 2 or 3 that I consider premier talents. After that, you're going for need rather than ability, in my opinion. But you've got upside, of course. 29, Green Bay Packers, a pick you want to talk about, I'm sure, Henry. You're getting an interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle, Davion Nixon, who, in my opinion, is the best defensive tackle in the class. What do you think? No wide receiver? No cornerback?
Yeah, you've done this deliberately. You just want the reaction, don't you? No, I'd be really, really disappointed with this pick. The two positions that you just listed there, Josh, are so much higher on my priority list for the Packers, both in terms of need, but also in terms of value and what they're going to bring to the team. The two things that we just saw from the Packers are what happens when our second cornerback gets targeted relentlessly and Kevin King getting roasted, whereas Jair Alexander had, from a yardage perspective, the best game in the history of the playoffs, allowing -3 yards. So that second corner slot has to be one of the primary focuses. If we don't address it in free agency, I'd like to see a corner. The other option is wide receiver or pass catcher. We saw what happens when Davante Adams is blanketed. So even when he's allowed receptions, they've got a guy over the top constantly. We did struggle for that consistent pass catcher who can win early. We have downfield threats, but I need a receiver here, Josh. I need a receiver or corner. I don't like this pick at all, and I'd be really disappointed if this was the direction we went. I can see us trading down, getting a corner or wide receiver at the start of the second. Perhaps if a team was coming back up for a quarterback, something that Seattle's been famous for doing, but I could see the Packers doing that this year.
Yeah, and that was my thought process. I went with, what do I genuinely think would happen, and what would that team do, much to the dismay of their fans, as you just depicted. You know, I do think the Packers address cornerback in free agency. I think where they sit in the draft, free agency has to be the way to go if you're trying to keep that playoff window open, or Super Bowl window even. I could see a wide receiver, but I don't really like the other guys. I like Kadarius Toney a lot. I love him a lot. But he's your slot guy, and you've got Davante Adams, and I just don't see the fit there the same way. You know, I'm sure you could work him in. You've got talent, bring it. But yeah, I think, look forward to being disappointed on draft day night. I think the best solution as a Packers fan, as it's always been as a Seahawks fan, is they trade down, like you said, and get some more value. And then you can start to YouTube some of those players that they end up taking. And maybe one of them becomes a good player in the NFL. But yeah, then we got the Buffalo Bills at number 30. I gave him a tackle, Jalen Mayfield. This is really where, you know, as a team, you just desperately try to find a piece to fit your missing hole. And I think upgrade the offensive line, give Josh Allen a bit more time to throw the ball. Not sold on Jalen Mayfield massively, but it would be a good pick, I'm sure. Chris?
I think if they don't go offensive tackle here, I think similar to the Steelers, we saw very little in productivity in the run game, and we just mentioned him, Najee Harris. I think the Bills, they've got Devin Singletary, not very good in my opinion. Zach Moss, they drafted obviously rookie, bit disappointing, very disappointing. I think if they don't go offensive tackle, Najee Harris should be a golden here.
Wow, bold predictions. I would be very surprised if any of the running backs make it into the first round. If any of them do, I agree, it's Najee Harris because of flexibility with pass catching. But I think if you're the Bills and you're sat there wondering what's going to put you over the next hurdle to be a Super Bowl winner or Super Bowl contender in the Super Bowl, is a running back really the piece? You know, I don't think so. I disagree with you wholeheartedly, to be honest, Chris, but could be proven wrong. Let's see. I think though, we saw what Josh Allen could do with the current formation, the current roster. So we know he's got an arm. We know he's got, he can run it as well. He's got Stephon Diggs. Gabriel Davis had a good year. Cole Beasley is always ever present. I think like I said, if they don't go offensive tackle, I think running back is the next skill piece they need to add to take that next step offensively. Yeah. I could see them trading up for Kyle Pitts, to be honest, or, you know, Kadarius Toney could have fitted here. I do think, someone on the offensive side of the football has to be the play here. You've got to elevate that. Yeah, maybe it is Najee Harris. You know, he brings a lot to the passing game, actually. Let's be fair to him. So yeah, good points, Chris. Let's see what happens there. We got the last two picks. Kansas City Chiefs take an interior offensive lineman, Creed Humphrey. This one was a tough one. They essentially get an interior offensive lineman at a top quality back this season, almost like a draft pick, because obviously one of their guards went off to be a doctor and help out with COVID. Maybe they don't need an interior offensive lineman, but you know, that offensive line needs some help somewhere, and Creed Humphrey would be a great move. Offensive tackle looks a bit weak here for me. So yeah, I really don't know what the Chiefs would do, but Creed Humphrey was my guess. And then what do you give a team that just won a Super Bowl, who has everything, but for the next year and a half, maybe two? I went for an edge rusher because maybe Shaq Barrett's not there. Gave him Jason Owe, edge from Penn State, but you know, who knows? On reflection, Henry, anything which you're sat there thinking I would have done differently if I was a GM, or you know?
I've got a good trend that I think that you've captured in this, and that I think will happen. I think that the NFL do look around the NFL, and they do copy lessons and trends that are going on. And I think the Joe Burrow serious injury and his O-line troubles, I think, will reverberate around the NFL. In this draft, Josh, you've got the Jags taking their quarterback of the future and then picking up top offensive line talent. You've got the Bengals picking Penei Sewell, number 5, top offensive line talent. You've got the Chargers picking offensive line. You've got the Chiefs picking offensive line. So lots of those young quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the Bills as well, you've got solidifying that offensive line to protect their quarterbacks. It's also just been on national spotlight what happens to the Chiefs without Eric Fisher, and the Packers without Bakhtiari. That's contributed massively to the Bucs Super Bowl success. So I like the way that you've matched up the offensive line with the young quarterbacks. I can really see that happening on draft night.
Great. Well, that's the end of the mock draft. More to come in the future. We'll be doing one where we split up the league by 4. We all have a go, include some trades in there. But please, if you've got any opinions, if you think your team's going to draft anyone, if you want to take the mick out of me for my opinions, please do give us a comment, send it around, let us know who you would have taken.